Poetry of Byron, read by Linus Roache. Stanzas. Could love for ever run like a river, and time's endeavour be tried in vain, so other pleasure with this could measure, and like a treasure we'd hug the chain. But since our sighing ends not in dying, and formed for flying love plumes his wing, then for this reason let's love a season, but let that season be only spring. When lovers parted feel broken-hearted, and all hopes thwarted expect to die, a few years older, ah, how much colder, they might behold her for whom they sigh. When linked together, in every weather, they pluck love's feather from out his wing, he'll stay forever but sadly shiver, without his plumage when past the spring. Like chiefs of faction, his life is action, a formal paction that curbs his reign, obscures his glory, despot no more he, such territory quits with disdain. Still advancing, with banners glancing, his power enhancing, he must move on. Repose but cloys him, retreat destroys him. Love brooks not a degraded throne. Wait not, fond lover, till years are over, and then recover as from a dream, while each bewailing, the others failing, with wrath and railing all hideous seem. While first decreasing, yet not quite ceasing, wait not till teasing all passion blight. If once diminished, love's reign is finished, then part in friendship, and bid good night. So shall affection to recollection the dear connection bring back with joy. You had not waited, till tired or hated, your passions sated began to cloy. Your last embraces leave no cold traces, the same fond faces as through the past, and eyes, the mirrors of your sweet errors, reflect but rapture, not least though last. True separations ask more than patience, what desperations from such have risen, but yet remaining, what is but chaining hearts which once waning beat against their prison? Time can but cloy love, and use destroy love. The winged love is but for boys. You'll find it torture, though sharper, shorter, to wean and not wear out your joys. She walks in beauty. She walks in beauty, like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek, and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Well, thou art happy. Well, thou art happy, and I feel that I should thus be happy too, for still my heart regards thy weal warmly as it was wont to do. Thy husband's blessed, and 'twill impart some pangs to view his happier lot, but let them pass. Oh, how my heart would hate him if he loved thee not. When late I saw thy favourite child, I thought my jealous heart would break, but when the unconscious infant smiled, I kissed it for its mother's sake. I kissed it, and repressed my sighs, its father in its face to see, but then it had its mother's eyes, and they were all to love and me. Mary, adieu, I must away. While thou art blessed I'll not repine, but near thee I can never stay, my heart would soon again be thine. I deemed that time, I deemed that pride had quenched at length my boyish flame, nor knew till seated by thy side, my heart in all, save hope, the same. Yet was I calm, I knew the time my breast would thrill before thy look, but now to tremble were a crime. we met, and not a nerve was shook. I saw thee gaze upon my face, yet met with no confusion there. One only feeling couldst thou trace, the sullen calmness of despair. Away, away, my early dream, remembrance never must awake. Oh, where is Lethe's fabled stream? My foolish heart be still, or break. Epistle to a Friend. Oh, banish care, such ever be the motto of thy revelry. Perchance of mine, when wassail nights renew those riotous delights wherewith the children of despair lull the lone heart and banish care. But riot in morn's reflecting hour, when present, past, and future lour, when all I loved is changed or gone, mock with such taunts the woes of one whose every thought— but let them pass. Thou knowest I am not what I was. But, above all, if thou wouldst hold place in a heart that ne'er was cold, by all the powers that men revere, by all unto thy bosom dear, thy joys below, thy hopes above, speak, speak of anything but love. 'Twere long to tell, and vain to hear, the tale of one who scorns a tear. And there is little in that tale which better bosoms would bewail. But mine has suffered more than well, 'twould suit philosophy to tell. I've seen my bride another's bride, have seen her seated by his side, have seen the infant which she bore wear the sweet smile the mother wore, when she and I in youth have smiled as fond and faultless as her child. Have seen her eyes in cold disdain ask if I felt no secret pain, and I have acted well my part, and made my cheek belie my heart, returned the freezing glance she gave, yet felt the while that woman's slave. Have kissed, as if without design, the babe which ought to have been mine, and showed, alas, in each caress, time had not made me love the less. But let this pass. I'll whine no more, nor seek again an eastern shore. The world befits a busy brain, I'll hie me to its haunts again. But if in some succeeding year, when Britain's May is in the sere, thou hear'st of one whose deepening crimes suit with the sablest of the times, of one whom love nor pity sways, nor hope of fame, nor good men's praise, one who in stern ambition's pride perchance not blood shall turn aside, one ranked in some recording page with the worst anarchs of the age, him wilt thou know, and knowing pause, nor with the effect forget the cause. When we two parted. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted to sever for years, pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, a knell to mine ear. A shudder comes o'er me, why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears. Stanzas to Augusta. Though the day of my destiny's over, and the star of my fate hath declined, thy soft heart refused to discover the faults which so many could find. Though thy soul with my grief was acquainted, it shrunk not to share it with me, and the love which my spirit hath painted, it never hath found but in thee. Then when nature around me is smiling, the last smile which answers to mine, I do not believe it beguiling, because it reminds me of thine. And when winds are at war with the ocean, as the breasts I believed in with me, If their billows excite an emotion, it is that they bear me from thee. Though the rock of my last hope is shivered, and its fragments are sunk in the wave, though I feel that my soul is delivered, to pain it shall not be its slave. There is many a pang to pursue me. They may crush, but they shall not condemn. They may torture, but shall not subdue me. 'Tis of thee that I think, not of them. Though human, thou didst not deceive me. Though woman, thou didst not forsake. Though loved, thou forborest to grieve me. Though slandered, thou never couldst shake. Though trusted, thou didst not disclaim me. Though parted, it was not to fly. Though watchful, 'twas not to defame me, nor mute, that the world might belie. Yet I blame not the world, nor despise it, nor the war of the many with one. If my soul was not fitted to prize it, 'twas folly not sooner to shun. And if dearly that error hath cost me, and more than I once could foresee, I have found that whatever it lost me, it could not deprive me of thee. From the wreck of the past which hath perished, thus much I at least may recall. It hath taught me that what I most cherished deserved to be dearest of all. In the desert a fountain is springing. In the wide waste there still is a tree, and a bird in the solitude singing, which speaks to my spirit of thee. Stanzas written on the road between Florence and Pisa. Oh, talk not to me of a name great in story. The days of our youth are the days of our glory, and the myrtle and ivy of sweet 22 are worth all your laurels, though ever so plenty. What are garlands and crowns to the brow is wrinkled? 'Tis but as a dead flower with May-dew besprinkled. Then away with all head that is hoary. What care I for the wreaths that can only give glory? Oh, if I e'er took delight in thy praises, 'twas less for the sake of thy high-sounding phrases, than to see the bright eyes of the dear one discover she thought that I was not unworthy to love her. There chiefly I sought thee, there only I found thee. Her glance was the best of the rays that surround thee. When it sparkled o'er aught that was bright in my story, I knew it was love, and I felt it was glory. Lines on hearing that Lady Byron was ill. And thou wert sad, yet I was not with thee. And thou wert sick, and yet I was not near. Methought that joy and health alone could be where I was not, and pain and sorrow here. And is it thus? It is as I foretold, and shall be more so. For the mind recoils upon itself, and the wrecked heart lies cold, while heaviness collects the shattered spoils. It is not in the storm nor in the strife we feel benumbed, and wish to be no more, but in the after-silence on the shore, when all is lost, except the little life. I am too well avenged, but 'twas my right. Whate'er my sins might be, thou wert not sent to be the nemesis who should requite, nor did heaven choose so near an instrument. Mercy is for the merciful. If thou hast been of such, 'twill be accorded now. Thy nights are banished from the realms of sleep. Yes, they may flatter thee, but thou shalt feel a hollow agony which will not heal, for thou art pillowed on a curse too deep. Thou hast sown in my sorrow, and must reap the bitter harvest in a woe as real. I have had many foes, but none like thee, for 'gainst the rest myself I could defend, and be avenged, or turn them into friend. But thou, in safe implacability, hadst naught to dread, in thy own weakness shielded, and in my love, which hath but too much yielded, and spared, for thy sake, some I should not spare. And thus upon the world trust in thy truth, and the wild fame of my ungoverned youth, on things that were not, and on things that are. Even upon such a basis hast thou built a monument, whose cement hath been gilt. The moral Clytemnestra of thy Lord, and hewed down with an unsuspected sword fame, peace, and hope, and all the better life, which, but for this cold treason of thy heart, might still have risen from out the grave of strife, and found a nobler duty than to part. But of thy virtues didst thou make a vice, trafficking with them in a purpose cold, for present anger and for future gold, and buying others' grief at any price. And thus once entered into crooked ways, the early truth, which was thy proper praise, did not still walk beside thee, but at times, and with a breast unknowing its own crimes, deceit, averments incompatible, equivocations, and the thoughts which dwell in Janus spirits, the significant eye which learns to lie with silence, the pretext of prudence with advantages annexed, the acquiescence in all things which tend, no matter how, to the desired end. All found a place in thy philosophy. The means were worthy, and the end is one. I would not do by thee as thou hast done. To Thomas Moore. My boat is on the shore, and my bark is on the sea. But before I go, Tom Moore, here's a double health to thee. Here's a sigh to those who love me, and a smile to those who hate. And whatever skies above me, here's a heart for every fate. Though the ocean roar around me, yet it still shall bear me on. Though a desert should surround me, it hath springs that may be won. Were it the last drop in the well, as I gasped upon the brink, ere my fainting spirit fell, 'tis to thee that I would drink. With that water as this wine, the libation I would pour should be peace with thine and mine, and a health to thee, Tom Moore. On this day I complete my 36th year. 'Tis time this heart should be unmoved, since others it hath ceased to move. Yet, though I cannot be beloved, still let me love. My days are in the yellow leaf, the flowers and fruits of love are gone. The worm, the canker, and the grief are mine alone. The fire that on my bosom preys is lone as some volcanic isle. No torch is kindled at its blaze, a funeral pile. The hope, the fear, the jealous care, the exalted portion of the pain and power of love I cannot share, but wear the chain. But 'tis not thus, and 'tis not here. Such thoughts should shake my soul, nor now, where glory decks the hero's bier, or binds his brow. The sword, the banner, and the field, glory and Greece around me see. The Spartan, borne upon his shield, was not more free. Awake, not Greece, she is awake. Awake, my spirit, think through whom thy lifeblood tracks its parent lake, and then strike home. Tread those reviving passions down, unworthy manhood. Unto thee, indifferent should the smile or frown of beauty be. If thou regret'st thy youth, why live? The land of honourable death is here, up to the field and breath. Seek out, less often sought than found, a soldier's grave, for thee the best. Then look around, and choose thy ground, and take thy rest. The destruction of Sennacherib. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed, and the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved, and for ever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the rider distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail, and the tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown. And the widows of Ashur are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal, and the might of the Gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. Juan and Haidee. There, breathless, with his digging nails he clung fast to the sand, lest the returning wave, from whose reluctant roar his life he wrung, should suck him back to her insatiate grave. And there he lay, full length where he was flung, before the entrance of a cliff-worn cave, with just enough of life to feel its pain, and deem that it was saved, perhaps in vain. With slow and staggering effort he arose, but sunk again upon his bleeding knee and quivering hand, and then he looked for those who long had been his mates upon the sea. But none of them appeared to share his woes, save one, a corpse from out the famished three, who died 2 days before, and now had found an unknown barren beach for burial ground. And as he gazed, his dizzy brain spun fast, and down he sunk, and as he sunk, the sand swam round, and all his senses passed. He fell upon his side, and his stretched hand drooped dripping on the oar, their jury-mast, and, like a withered lily on the land, his slender frame and pallid aspect lay, as fair a thing as e'er was formed of clay. How long in his damp trance young Juan lay, he knew not, for the earth was gone for him, and time had nothing more of night nor day for his congealing blood and senses dim. And how this heavy faintness passed away he knew not, till each painful pulse and limb and tingling vein seemed throbbing back to life, though vanquished, still retired with strife. His eyes he opened, shut, again unclosed, for all was doubt and dizziness. He thought he still was in the boat, and had but dozed, and felt again with his despair o'erwrought, and wished it death in which he had reposed. And then once more his feelings back were brought, and slowly by his swimming eyes was seen a lovely female face of 17. 'Twas bending close o'er his, and the small mouth seemed almost prying into his for breath, and chafing him, the soft warm hand of youth recalled his answering spirits back from death, and, bathing his chill temples, tried to soothe each pulse to animation, till beneath its gentle touch and trembling care, a sigh to these kind efforts made a low reply. Then was the cordial poured, and mantle flung around his scarce-clad limbs, and the fair arm raised higher the faint head which o'er it hung, and her transparent cheek, all pure and warm, pillowed his death-like forehead. Then she wrung his dewy curls, long drenched by every storm, and watched with eagerness each throb that drew a sigh from his heaved bosom, and hers too. And lifting him with care into the cave, the gentle girl and her attendant, one young, yet her elder, and of brow less grave, and more robust of figure, then begun to kindle fire, and as the new flames gave light to the rocks that roofed them, which the sun had never seen, the maid, or whatsoe'er she was, appeared distinct and tall and fair. Her brow was overhung with coins of gold, that sparkled o'er the auburn of her hair, her clustering hair, whose longer locks were rolled in braids behind. And though her stature were even of the highest for a female mould, they nearly reached her heel, and in her air there was a something which bespoke command, as one who was a lady in the land. Her hair, I said, was auburn, but her eyes were black as death, their lashes the same of downcast length, in whose silk shadow lies deepest attraction. For when to the view, forth from its raven fringe the full glance flies, ne'er with such force the swiftest arrow flew. 'Tis as the snake late coiled, who pours his length, and hurls at once his venom and his strength. Her brow was white and low, her cheeks pure dye, like twilight rosy still with the set sun, short upper lip, sweet lips, that make us sigh ever to have seen such. For she was one fit for the model of a statuary. A race of mere impostors when all's done. I've seen much finer women, ripe and real, than all the nonsense of their stone ideal. I'll tell you why I say so, for 'tis just, one should not rail without a decent cause. There was an Irish lady, to whose bust I ne'er saw justice done, and yet she was a frequent model. And if e'er she must yield to stern time and nature's wrinkling laws, they will destroy a face which mortal thought ne'er compassed, nor less mortal chisel wrought. And such was she, the lady of the cave, very different from the Spanish, simpler, and yet of colours not so grave. For, as you know, the Spanish women banish bright hues when out of doors, and yet, while wave around them, what I hope will never vanish, the basquina and the mantilla, they seem at the same time mystical and gay. But with our damsel, this was not the case. Her dress was many-coloured, finely spun. Her locks curled negligently round her face, but through them gold and gems profusely shone. Her girdle sparkled, and the richest lace flowed in her veil, and many a precious stone flashed on her little hand. But, what was shocking, her small snow feet had slippers, but no stocking. The other female's dress was not unlike, but of inferior materials. She had not so many ornaments to strike, her hair had silver only, bound to be her dowry, and her veil, in form alike, was coarser, and her air, though firm, less free. Her hair was thicker, but less long, her eyes as black, but quicker, and of smaller size. And these two tended him, and cheered him both with food and raiment, and those soft attentions which are, as I must own, of female growth, and have 10,000 delicate inventions. They made a most superior mess of broth, a thing which poesy but seldom mentions, but the best dish that e'er was cooked since Homer's Achilles ordered dinner for newcomers. I'll tell you who they were, this female pair, lest they should seem princesses in disguise. Besides, I hate all mystery, and that air of claptrap which your recent poets prize. And so, in short, the girls they really were, they shall appear before your curious eyes. Mistress and maid. The first was only daughter of an old man who lived upon the water. A fisherman he had been in his youth, and still a sort of fisherman was he. But other speculations were, in sooth, added to his connection with the sea. Perhaps not so respectable in truth. A little smuggling and some piracy left him at last the soul of many masters, of an ill-gotten million of piastres. A fisher, therefore, was he, though of men, like Peter the Apostle, and he fished for wandering merchant vessels now and then, and sometimes caught as many as he wished. The cargoes he confiscated, and gain he sought in the slave market too, and dished full many a morsel for that Turkish trade, by which, no doubt, a good deal may be made. He was a Greek, and on his isle had built, one of the wild and smaller Cyclades, a very handsome house from out his guilt, and there he lived exceedingly at ease. Heaven knows what cash he got or blood he spilt. A sad old fellow was he, if you please, but this I know, it was a spacious building, full of barbaric carving, paint and gilding. He had an only daughter called Haidee, the greatest heiress of the Eastern Isles. Besides, so very beautiful was she, her dowry was as nothing to her smiles. Still in her teens, and like a lovely tree, she grew to womanhood, and between whiles rejected several suitors, just to learn how to accept a better in his turn. And walking out upon the beach, below the cliff, towards sunset, on that day she found, insensible, not dead, but nearly so, Don Juan, almost famished, and half drowned. But being naked, she was shocked, you know, yet deemed herself in common pity bound, as far as in her lay, to take him in, a stranger, dying, with so white a skin. But taking him into her father's house was not exactly the best way to save, but like conveying to the cat the mouse, or people in a trance to their grave. Because the good old man had so much nous, unlike the honest Arab thief so brave, he would have hospitably cured the stranger, and sold him instantly, when out of danger. And therefore, with her maid, she thought it best, a virgin always on her maid relies, to place him in the cave for present rest. And when at last he opened his black eyes, their charity increased about their guest, and their compassion grew to such a size, it opened half the turnpike gates to heaven. St. Paul says, 'tis the toll which must be given. For still he lay, and on his thin worn cheek a purple hectic played like dying day on the snow-tops of distant hills. The streak of sufferance yet upon his forehead lay, where the blue veins looked shadowy, shrunk and weak, and his black curls were dewy with the spray, which weighed upon them yet, all damp and salt, mixed with the stony vapours of the vault. And she bent o'er him, and he lay beneath, hushed as the babe upon its mother's breast, drooped as the willow when no winds, lulled like the depth of ocean when at rest, fair as the crowning rose of the whole wreath, soft as the callow cygnet in its nest. In short, he was a very pretty fellow, although his woes had turned him rather yellow. He woke, and gazed, and would have slept again, but the fair face which met his eyes forbade those eyes to close, though weariness and pain had further sleep a further pleasure made. For woman's face was never formed in vain for Juan, so that even when he prayed, he turned from grisly saints and martyrs hairy to the sweet portraits of the Virgin Mary. And thus upon his elbow he arose, and looked upon the lady in whose cheek the pale contended with the purple rose. As with an effort she began to speak. Her eyes were eloquent, her words would pose, although she told him, in good modern Greek, with an Ionian accent low and sweet, that he was faint, and must not talk, but eat. Now Juan could not understand a word, being no Grecian, but he had an ear, and her voice was the warble of a bird, so soft, so sweet, so delicately clear, that finer, simpler music ne'er was heard. The sort of sound we echo with a tear, without knowing why, an overpowering tone, whence melody descends as from a throne. And Juan gazed as one who is awoke by a distant organ, doubting if he be not yet a dreamer, till the spell is broke by the watchman, or some such reality, or by one's early valley's cursed knock. At least it is a heavy sound to me, who like a morning slumber, for the night shows stars and women in a better light. And Juan, too, was helped out from his dream, or sleep, or whatsoe'er it was, by feeling a most prodigious appetite. The steam was stealing upon his senses, and the kindling beam of the new fire which Zoe kept up, kneeling, to stir her viands, made him quite awake, and long for food, but chiefly a beef steak. But beef is rare within these oxless isles. Goat's flesh there is, no doubt, and kid and mutton, and, when a holiday upon them smiles, a joint on their barbarous spits they put on. But this occurs but seldom, between whiles, for some of these are rocks with scarce a hut on. Others are fair and fertile, among which this, though not large, was one of the most rich. I say that beef is rare, and can't help thinking that the old fable of the Minotaur, from which our modern morals, rightly shrinking, condemn the royal lady's tastes who wore a cow's shape for a mask, was only, sinking the allegory, a mere type, no more. That Pasiphae promoted breeding cattle, to make the Cretans bloodier in battle. For we all know that English people are fed upon beef. I won't say much of beer, because 'tis liquor only, and being far from this my subject, has no business here. We know, too, they are very fond of war, a pleasure, like all pleasures, rather dear. So were the Cretans, from which I infer that beef and battles both were owing to her. But to resume. The languid Juan raised his head upon his elbow, and he saw a sight on which he had not lately gazed, as all his latter meals had been quite raw. 3 or 4 things for which the Lord he praised. And, feeling still the famished vulture gnaw, he fell upon whate'er was offered, like a priest, a shark, an alderman, or pike. He ate, and he was well supplied, and she who watched him like a mother would have fed him past all bounds, because she smiled to see such appetite in one she had deemed dead. But Zoe, being older than Haidee, knew, by tradition, for she ne'er had read, that famished people must be slowly nursed, and fed by spoonfuls, else they always burst. And so she took the liberty to state, rather by deeds than words, because the case was urgent, that the gentleman whose fate had made her mistress quit her bed to trace the seashore at this hour must leave his plate, unless he wished to die upon the place. She snatched it, and refused another morsel, saying he had gorged enough to make a horse ill. Next they, he being naked, save a tattered pair of scarce decent trousers, went to work, and in the fire his recent rags they scattered, and dressed him for the present like a Turk, or Greek, that is, although it not much mattered, omitting turban, slippers, pistols, dirk. They furnished him entire, except some stitches, with a clean shirt, and very spacious breeches. The Ave Maria. Ave Maria, blessed be the hour, the time, the clime, the spot, where I so oft have felt that moment in its fullest power sink o'er the earth so beautiful and soft, while swung the deep bell in the distant tower, or the faint dying day hymn stole aloft, and not a breath crept through the rosy air, and yet the forest leaves seemed stirred with prayer. Ave Maria, 'tis the hour of prayer. Ave Maria, 'tis the hour of love. Ave Maria, may our spirits dare look up to thine and to thy sons above. Ave Maria, oh, that face so fair, those downcast eyes beneath the almighty dove. What though 'tis but a pictured image? Strike, that painting is no idol, 'tis too like. Some kinder casuists are pleased to say, in nameless print, that I have no devotion. But set those persons down with me to pray, and you shall see who has the properest notion of getting into heaven the shortest way. My altars are the mountains and the ocean, earth, air, stars, all that springs from the great whole, who hath produced and will receive the soul. Sweet hour of twilight, in the solitude of the pine forest, and the silent shore which bounds Ravenna's immemorial wood, rooted where once the Adrian wave flowed o'er, to where the last Caesarean fortress stood, evergreen forest, which Boccaccio's Law and Dryden's Lay made haunted ground to me. How have I loved the twilight hour and thee! The shrill cicalas, people of the pine, making their summer lives one ceaseless song, were the sole echoes, save my steeds and mine, and vesper bells that rose the boughs along. The spectre huntsman of Onestes' line, his hell-dogs and their chase, and the fair throng which learned from this example not to fly from a true lover, shadowed my mind's eye. O Hesperus, thou bringest all good things home to the weary, to the hungry cheer, to the young bird the parent's brooding wings, the welcome stall to the o'erlaboured steer. Whate'er of peace about our hearthstone clings, whate'er our household gods protect of dear, are gathered round us by thy look of rest. Thou bringest the child, too, to the mother's breast. Soft hour, which wakes the wish and melts the heart of those who sail the seas, on the first day when they from their sweet friends are torn apart, or fills with love the pilgrim on his way, as the far bell of vesper makes him start, seeming to weep the dying day's decay. Is this fancy which our reason scorns? Ah, surely nothing dies but something mourns. When Nero perished by the justest doom, whichever the destroyer yet destroyed, amidst the roar of liberated Rome, of nations freed, and the world overjoyed, some hand unseen strewed flowers upon his tomb. Perhaps the weakness of a heart not void of feeling for some kindness done, when power had left the wretch an uncorrupted hour.